Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes here. We had more people registered, so we're going to give them a couple of minutes to get in, and we will get started shortly. Thank you for attending. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started now. And I think I'm Scott Allen with the Citizens Utility Board, and Gabriel Guevara from Elevate Energy is with me today, and he is going to kick us off and tell us what this is all about.
Hi everyone. This is my name is Gabriel Guevara, and we're going to be doing a webinar on like energy efficiency in this time of like social distancing and staying home order, because everyone is home more and using more energy, and we're just trying to, and this webinar focuses on simple ways that you can save energy while you're at home at this time, as well as some of the consumer protections during this time of the COVID emergency. So yeah, that is that. How do I change?
Oh, I can see here. All right. Thank you, Gabriel. And if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to type those into the chat box there. And we have a couple of people that are flagging those questions, and we can answer those at the end. But please feel free to ask anything you need to. And there will be an email that goes out after this as well. It has some links to resources that we're going to talk about, and also some links to fact sheets. But it also explains that Gabriel and I set this up as we intended it to be kind of a two-part series, because we are going to be talking about the utility relief that has come about along with the emergency order, and we want to do a follow-up for once the emergency order is lifted and there's kind of a new set of rules in place for the utility. So we will follow up with everybody once we get that set, once those rules do take place. So we will kick it off. Okay, so I am Scott Allen with the Citizens Utility Board. I am an environmental outreach coordinator. I work mostly in downstate for CUB, doing a lot of these types of outreach events and a lot of outreach relative to Ameren, but also to downstate specific issues. But for anybody that's not familiar with what CUB does, we were started as within the General Assembly in 1984 for the purpose of being the body in between the consumers and the investor-owned utility. So Pat Quinn, when he was a legislator, decided that somebody needed to represent consumers in front of the Illinois Commerce Commission, the courts, and the General Assembly, to make people aware of things that would affect their utility rates, and to give utility ratepayers a way to make complaints to the regulatory bodies if they needed to. So that's what we do. We normally do about 500 or so outreach events every year. Things are a little different now, obviously, since we can't see people face to face. So this is our new method, is the webinar, and it's been working pretty well so far. So I will let Gabriel introduce himself now.
So, like I said, I'm Gabriel, and I'm a community outreach representative for Elevate Energy. Elevate Energy is a nonprofit organization that focuses on fighting climate change through energy efficiency. We feel that by tackling the issue of energy efficiency and helping communities become more energy efficient, that we will be able to be in a better position to tackle the greater issue of climate change. So like I go out in the community and I teach them about energy efficiency through workshops and tabling at events and doing one-on-ones and things of that nature. So yeah, that's me.
So like I've mentioned, what we're going to run through is I'm going to kind of go over the utility shutoffs and the moratorium on shutoffs and late fees, just kind of where we've been for the last couple of months. And I guess it's kind of a reminder of what will be in place for the next few days, at least. After that, we're going to start talking about ways that people can save on their energy bills, point out a couple of things that everybody should know, generally, whether we're under an emergency order or not. But then Gabriel is going to go into some more detailed energy reducing tips. And then we will talk about some other resources at the end. So in March, when the emergency order was going into effect, Governor Pritzker requested that the Illinois Commerce Commission issue some consumer protections so that we weren't dealing with shutoffs and people worrying about whatever other economic impacts would happen, that they shouldn't have to worry about their vital utilities being shut off at the same time. So the Illinois Commerce Commission put out an official order saying that all of the investor-owned utilities, gas, water, and electricity, were to suspend shutting their customers off. And also, this is something maybe that gets a little less attention and I think is just as important, but also suspend any threats for shutting people off as well. Just, I guess, to kind of cut that tension. And in addition to that, the late fees that normally accumulate, making it harder for already vulnerable consumers to pay their bills, then they're having late fees stack up on top of that. However, those late fees are not going to go away. That's something that I'll touch on here in the next slide. But there was also the implementation of temporary flexible credit and payment procedures to ensure that customers remain connected to their services. And also that the door-to-door alternate retail electric suppliers, and I hesitate to say that this is one of the kind of benefits or one of the positives that's come out of this, but it has stopped those salesmen going door to door. I wouldn't say that any of this is worth that. But since so many of those sales are door to door and that's not safe contact, the ICC mandated those sales to stop until further notice. So that went into effect, and it was set to expire at the end of April, and clearly the crisis wasn't over at the end of April, so they gave it another deadline, the end of May, and we're approaching that. But originally in its order, the ICC did state that this would go on till the end of May, the end of April, then the end of May, or until the emergency order was lifted. And so we don't know yet that the emergency order is going to be lifted, or that the phased reopening will make everything safe again. So we're kind of getting to that point. And that's why we wanted to make sure that people still did know what their rights are, that things were eventually going to get back to some kind of order, and that some of these moratoria might expire. But along with this, the Illinois Commerce Commission also demanded, or not demanded, they told the utilities that they have to work with the Commerce Commission to settle on what is going to be, what consumer protections are going to be offered for 6 months following the emergency order. They wanted them to still maintain flexible credit and payment procedures, and to make sure that people aren't getting disconnected while they're in recovery mode. So that's an open docket with the ICC right now, and there's no reason to assume that they won't have that worked out by the time the emergency order ends. We just don't know exactly what provisions will be in there. So that's why we wanted to make this a two-part thing, so that we can come back and talk about what those new provisions are. In addition to that, there are some other things that have happened with this emergency order. One of those is that through the CARES Act, Illinois got an additional just around $42 million for the federal side of LIHEAP funds. And that means that the enrollment deadline is extended until June 30th. So that's a month longer to get people enrolled in that program. And for anybody, I would imagine that everybody has heard of LIHEAP, and that's the low-income home energy assistance program. So if somebody has trouble paying their bills, this is a program where they can get direct assistance to do that. And normally that's based on 30 days of income. So if somebody in April lost their job and now they're struggling, it's only based on the past 30 days. So with that additional money and with an extended deadline, we're hoping that people will take advantage of this service, get enrolled, and get some help with those bills. Because like I said, that these late fees will eventually come due. So it's best to get that assistance when it's needed. And all over the state, the intake sites for LIHEAP are obviously under social distancing and essential worker restrictions themselves. So it is possible for people to call their local community action agency or whatever action agency in the area does LIHEAP intake. But this 800 number here is the statewide hotline. And so I believe, at least for part of the state, they're starting that enrollment process. But if you call this number and they take your information, they will tell you what site nearest you is doing LIHEAP intake. In addition to the investor-owned utilities for gas, electric, and water, there are some telecoms that have offered either voluntary protections, or they've been asked either by the Illinois Commerce Commission or the Federal Communications Commission to also extend some kind of relief to their customers. CUB has a sheet. We went through and found all of the cell phone providers and cable and internet providers, and found out what they were offering as far as late payments or Some cell phone providers are providing free data packages, or if you're schooling from home now, these typically low-cost internet packages they've kind of been extended to allow more bandwidth and to adjust the price to try to make sure that people who do have school-age kids at home, that they can have affordable and decently fast internet, so that they can interact with their school. For municipal and co-op utilities, say for example Springfield, which has its own utility, CWLP, the Commerce Commission doesn't have the same regulatory control over those municipalities and co-ops, but they did ask that those entities voluntarily comply. And the word from the Commerce Commission was that all of them across the state had agreed to suspend disconnections and late payments also. It's not clear whether or not those utilities set an expiration date, or whether or not they were going along with the emergency order. And like I said, normally the Illinois Commerce Commission doesn't deal with those sorts of complaints, but the Commerce Commission did say that that they were glad to take complaints from municipal or co-op customers and try to work out an arrangement with that utility, which is something they normally don't do, but in these circumstances, they were willing to do that. And so this 800 number is the number for the Commerce Commission's consumer complaint hotline. That is, you can also call CUB about any of this information, and we can try to point you in the right directions to resources or financial assistance or any of that stuff. And I put a link in the follow-up email to CUB's Help Center. It contains a full list of those telecoms that I mentioned, what they were offering. It also contains information about several of the other things that we're going to talk about. So I already mentioned that this order went into place on March 18th at the request of the governor. They're going to expire on June 1st, or once the emergency order expires, and that the Commerce Commission's in talks with the utilities. Oh, I lost part of my slides, but what we're advising people to do, what CUB is advising, is that people, best they can, try to stay up with their payments, because those late fees will come due. They're not permanently waived. They're not going to disconnect you because you haven't made late payments or you haven't reconciled those payments, but eventually the utility will collect on those. It'll be in a more relaxed manner, and more flexible payment options will be introduced, but the utility will eventually try to collect that money. So as best as people can, whether it's getting assistance through LIHEAP or any other assistance they can, it would be best, we think, to keep up on those payments. And we're going to shift gears here now and talk about some things that people can do to try to save a little money while they're sheltering in place. It seems pretty obvious, but in the first few weeks that this happened, there was something that, well, what happened was that people's individual usage went up. So people's bills were going up. Overall electricity production went down, just because, you know, the bigger buildings, schools, and a lot of the office buildings weren't running. They were shut down. So it's kind of an odd phenomenon, but that's the way that is. And if people have no other choice but to stay home, and they have to use their appliances when they normally wouldn't, it's worried some consumers we've gotten in touch with, or several have gotten in touch with us asking if there are things that they can do and that's kind of what prompted us to put this together. I'm going to talk like kind of a frontline thing that, crisis or not, some things that everybody should know before we even get into any of these other tips. So the first thing being that this is the first page of your Ameren bill, and there's some fairly valuable information on here that if you can understand your usage a little better, it will allow you to maximize savings from some of these things that Gabriel is going to talk about shortly. But Ameren gives a breakdown of your 13 months of a 13-month record of your gas and electric use. And I think a lot of the consumers that I talk to, they notice this on there and they kind of know what Ameren is showing them. They're just not 100% certain what to do with it. But I like to tell people that it gives them an idea of, for example, this user, whoever it might have been, if we look back to the same time last year, we see that these two numbers are about the same. So, they're on average with what they're doing last year. If there was a huge spike or huge decline in this number, we would kind of wonder either what's going on now or what was going on then. But you want to see that you guess that this person, maybe this person has electric heat, because in the winter months we would kind of expect to see electricity usage down a little bit, but since it's up quite a bit and the gas usage is not, I suppose that's a little closer to what you'd expect to see in the wintertime too. But the bottom line is that paying attention to this and knowing what you're using every month really helps you get an understanding of how much electricity you're using. And once you do that, you can kind of start to micromanage your usage and ration it a little better. The third page of an Ameren bill tells us probably the one thing that could save everybody money if they checked it out, and that is who your electric supplier is. So this customer is on Ameren's default supply, which is currently about 4.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And a lot of times what we see with those alternate suppliers, those door-to-door salesmen, is that they lock people into variable rate contracts or just lock them onto a variable rate, not necessarily in a year contract. So they might give them an introductory rate of 3.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And then 2-3 months later, they shift that and it goes to 6.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you're paying 2 cents per kilowatt hour more than you should be, obviously that's going to make a significant difference on your total bill. So this is kind of the one thing that everybody should be checking every month to see who their supplier is. If you're on an alternate supplier, most of the time under here you will see the name of that company. Sometimes it will say something like 12-month or 18-month, and that means that you're locked into a contract with them. So it's best at that point to get a hold of the supplier and find out the length of your contract. And you have to weigh that against what they're charging you. How much more expensive is that than Ameren's default rate? Because if you're paying 2 cents per kilowatt hour more than you should be with them, it might be worth paying them the $50 to get out of that contract. And over the course of the next several months, unfortunately, you pay that money, but you can kind of make that savings back up. But the best thing to do overall is to not get on one of those supply contracts. Generally, that's the rule. It is possible through municipal aggregation deals that people can get a cheaper rate than Ameren's basic supply rate. It hasn't happened very often the last few years. And the reason for that is that when you get some electricity from Ameren, Ameren's not making any money off of that. the Illinois Power Agency has been given the job of procuring electricity so that if you're an Ameren customer and you haven't selected another supplier, we have supply choice in Illinois, meaning that Ameren doesn't own the generation and the delivery anymore. Now they just own their wires, so they make all of their profit by delivering you that electricity. So if you don't select a supplier, you still need electricity. And so Ameren supplies that electricity, but they make no profit off of it. The Illinois Power Agency goes out, they procure electricity, Ameren passes that through on at no cost to the consumer, so they have no profit margins. But the alternate suppliers, they have to make a profit off of that. So if they're undercutting Ameren, essentially they're losing money. And at some point they will have to charge you more in order to make some sort of profit. So that's typically Ameren, the cost of electricity is going down. So Ameren has been able to get those prices procured by the IPA, the Illinois Power Agency, for a little bit cheaper. And in fact, I just learned today, it won't be on any of this information because we just found out today, but Ameren's, the price for Ameren's electricity starting June 1st for the first 800 kilowatt hours is going to be 4.396 cents. And that's down from 4.7 cents per kilowatt hour. We will update all of this information in round 2, but we wanted to make sure to get that out there since we were able to confirm that for today. And now I will turn it back over to Gabriel so that he can talk more about ways that people can save while they're locked down, some programs that they can take advantage of. So here we go.
Okay. Share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, here we go. So I'm going to be talking about utility savings programs. So these programs were around before COVID and they'll be around after COVID. So the first program that I'm going to talk to you about is Peak Time Rewards. So Peak Time Rewards is an incentive program meant to incentivize customers to reduce their power usage during peak time days. And peak time days are days where the utility companies feels as though they won't be able to serve everyone on the grid effectively because like the demand of electricity is so high. And a peak time day is usually during the summer on extremely hot days. And so like the way that this program works is that if you are a customer with Ameren and you enroll in this program, Ameren will contact you 24 hours before the peak time day with a designated time frame to reduce your energy on that day at that particular time. And if you're able to reduce your energy during that time frame, you will receive a credit on your next month's bill. And that's basically how the program works. There is no cost to enroll in this program, and there's no penalty if you aren't able to reduce your power during that time frame. And you can take yourself off this program at any time. So that's basically Peak Time Rewards. The next program that I'm going to talk to you about is, there we go, is Power Smart Pricing. So Power Smart Pricing takes advantage of the hourly price of electricity. So when we think about electricity, we normally think that the price of electricity is constant throughout the day, and that's not the case. Actually, the price of electricity fluctuates throughout the day. This graph here I got from the Power Smart Pricing website, and it kind of shows you the general trend of how the price of electricity changes throughout the day. This brown line shows the price of electricity on typically during a summer month day. The price of electricity starts off low and then gradually increases and peaks like around mid-afternoon to like late afternoon, and then dips off. And then during the non-summer months, the price of electricity has like two peaks. Once in the morning when people are generally getting ready for work, and then again kind of that mid afternoon time frame. And so that's like the general trend of like the price of electricity. And now I'm going to take you to Power Smart Pricing to actually show you the price of electricity for today, actually. So if you go to Power Smart Pricing, you could actually see the actual price of electricity throughout the day. And for today, the highest point, like the highest cost for electricity is 2.3 cents. And, as you can see, that's in the midday, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And then it tinkers off to like 1.5 cents in the evening. So there's that. And so armed with the price armed with what the price of electricity is like throughout the day, and knowing where like the low point of electricity are, consumers can monitor their behavior, where like they can utilize energy at those low demand points for savings. And as I mentioned before, the high point today for electricity is 2.3 cents, and the current price of for electricity that Ameren is charging you at a constant rate, if you are using up to like 800 kilowatt hours, is 4.707 cents, and if you use more than 800 kilowatt hours, it's 4.468 cents. So you can see that, with Power Smart Pricing, with monitoring your behavior and using electricity at the low demand points, on top of the prices usually being lower than the constant rate, consumers are liable to save on this program. But unlike peak time rewards, there is a cost to being on the Power Smart Pricing program. But that is a monthly fee of $2.25. And if you're on Power Smart Pricing and you realize that it's not for you, or it's not working out or whatnot, you can enroll at any time. But for whatever reason, if you choose to re-enroll in the program, you do have to wait an entire calendar year to re-enroll in the program. So that's Power Smart Pricing. Next are basically general savings tips that anyone can use, whether if you're an Ameren customer or not. One tip, like I'm going to start talking, is LED light bulbs. LED light bulbs are a great way to start saving and conserving on energy, because LED light bulbs, they're able to produce high quality light just like an incandescent light bulb. But the difference is an LED light bulb uses roughly 75% less energy than an incandescent light bulb, and it lasts 25% longer than an incandescent light bulb. So it's like you're getting the same quality of light, but you're using less energy and it lasts longer. So you're not constantly buying light bulbs. The next tip that I have for you is reducing your water heater to 120 degrees. Hot water is automatically set to 140 degrees, but at 120 degrees, you get the same, effect and quality of hot water. So you don't necessarily have to overwork your heater you know, for that extra 20 degrees. The next two tips revolve around adjusting your thermostat. So if you set your thermostat to a range between 76 to 78 degrees to cool your house, and also adjusting your thermostat to 68 to 69 degrees to heat up your house. That helps to save your energy, because each extra degree you use to heat or cool your house increases your energy use by like 6 to 8%. So that's just something to think about. And then lastly, unplugging appliances that aren't in use. So even if you're not using your appliance, but like you have it plugged in, like that appliance is still drawing power from the grid, and so that contributes to your light bill and energy consumption. So yeah, those are the energy saving tips that I have for you. And then for those that are interested in learning, getting more in depth into energy efficiency or learning more programs that are available to you, here are some resources that are available. We have the Citizens Utility Board, Elevate Energy, the U.S. Department of Energy, and Ameren, Illinois. These websites have, energy efficiency sections to them, and they have like further knowledge and programs on, what people can do to save energy. So I'll give it back to Scott.
So with the, I've got a couple of questions for you before we jump to audience questions. So does it matter who your supplier is if you want to enroll in, say, the peak time rewards? Does it matter who your supplier is for that?
I believe peak time rewards and Power Smart pricing are only for Ameren customers.
Okay, so well, I think I know with Power Smart pricing, you have to have Ameren as your default supplier. In fact, in order to, when you enroll in that program, you would get kicked off of your default supply, switch back to Ameren. But the other one, since it doesn't really, since the idea is to cut your usage overall with the peak time rewards, the idea is that it doesn't matter maybe who your supplier is, they just want you to use less electricity wherever it's coming from. So just curious about that. And so Elevate, so these programs are offered, we all pay for these programs. It's not like these are a gift from the utility gods. All ratepayers, there's been a collection made on your bills. It's not much of one. And they're offered through the utility, through Ameren, but Ameren doesn't actually administer these programs. Elevate does, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so if they're interested in enrolling in Power Smart pricing and they call the 800 number, would they talk to somebody from Elevate or from Ameren?
They would talk to our call center. If they were interested in the Power Smart pricing, they would be directed to someone in our call center, and then they would be provided with more information, or if they were like seriously consider enrolling in the program, then if I'm not mistaken, they would analyze their utility bills, and because like there's criteria that needs to be met to like decide if that person is a good fit for the program. And so they would have like a further conversation with the call center to see if they are a fit. And if they are, they'll be enrolled. And if not, then they wouldn't be.
So if somebody, for whatever reason, based on their usage, if they say tended to use under the average of, maybe somebody didn't even average 800 kilowatt hours per month, and they call the enrollment number, they talk to somebody from Elevate, and they say that we don't think you would be a good fit for this program. They won't enroll them in something that is not going to save them, right?
No.
That's good, because I think that's kind of there is a cost to being in that program. You have to pay $2.25 a month, and you kind of run the risk of uh, if you're not going to save enough by being on that program, you have to save at least $2.25 to break even.
Yeah.
So that's good that somebody's at least having a last look at that before you're enrolled, to say that we don't think you would be a good fit for this. And so with the peak time rewards, there's no, like, if I can't reduce my usage during that time, that event, I don't get penalized for that. I don't have to like pay a fee because I didn't.
No. There's no benefit. There's no benefit. There's no penalty if you aren't able to reduce your energy during that time. You only receive a benefit if you are able to reduce, but if you're not, nothing happens.
That's a saving grace about it, I suppose.
Yeah.
So did we have any questions from anybody?
Thanks, Scott and Gabriel. Yes, we did have a question from someone who said, can you explain what LIHEAP is and what it offers? And they also have a second question. I have heard many people say that they applied and never heard back. What is the turnaround time to register, and what can be done for those experiencing delays?
Sure. So LIHEAP, like I said, it's the low income, it sounds like it probably knows, it's the low income home energy assistance program. And so if you're an eligible low income, you're in an eligible low income household, this program helps pay for those utility bills, especially during the winter months. And like I said, the eligibility is based on 30-day income. And so when kind of jumping to the second part of that, when somebody enrolls, they check all of that out. As far as, so it's direct. One of the ways that they can do is direct to the provider, direct to the vendor. Utility bill assistance could be a one-time payment, but the idea is that it helps people make those utility payments. Now, as to the turnaround time, and so the question was, this person applied and didn't hear anything back.
I'm guessing that.
Okay, yeah. So, well, I think that typically the enrollment period for that, it starts let me see, October 1st for seniors, and normally ends May 30th. Like I mentioned, that's been extended because of the COVID crisis. So if it's been just recently and you haven't heard back from the Community Action Agency, I'm not sure which area you're in. I think right now there could be several reasons that you might not have heard back. But if we can, Gabriel, can we flip back to that slide with the 800 number?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the statewide number, but I would be curious to find out, and maybe the asker of that could put some contact information in the chat so that we can follow up. Because I know that right now, there are delays being expected, but as quickly as an agency can process that and let the utility know that you qualify, or that your income qualified for that program, you can get started. But there might be something else going on there if you haven't heard back from the community action agency. So maybe if whoever asked that question could put some contact information in the chat, then we can follow up. And was there another?
Yes. Will there be any forgiveness?
So I got a little expert help on the fly here because Kathy Walk, with one of those community action agencies, she says, and I fully trust her input on this because she would be considered an expert. Agencies have 30 days to approve or deny an application. Due to COVID, agencies now have 60 days to process applications. So that could explain that depending on the agency you applied for, they could just be understaffed and overwhelmed right now. And so, the state is giving them 60 days to process an application. There is a customer portal at liheap.net that a customer can check to see the status of their application. But we'll make sure to follow up with that information. Thank you, Kathy, very much for the help with that. I'm sorry, Aniris, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. I also provided a link right now with that information. And the second question is, will there be any forgiveness for bills not paid due to the lack of work caused by COVID-19? What can be done to push the utility company to forgive debts during these extraordinary circumstances?
Thank you. So right now, I don't think that CUB, we're not aware of any of any kind of bill forgiveness through the utilities. That's not to say that that's not something that'll be possible. It's unlikely that, and the utilities do have funds that they could cover that. However, I think that if somebody were to be in the situation where they just couldn't pay, unless the utility is specifically offering like a debt forgiveness program, then it's likely that if you were just to not pay and the utility is not offering any option for debt forgiveness, then it's going to cause the next time you get service, or that will eventually, once these emergency orders have been lifted, then they will be able to do a disconnection. So yeah, as of right now, I'm not aware of any bill forgiveness programs to the utilities, but there are, for somebody that's having problem, and even that assistance, that direct assistance through LIHEAP isn't enough. There are other agents or other organizations that help people with those emergency funds to, if they can pay off a lump sum and get that person kind of back to zero going forward. And again, if that's the same person that asked that, we can include that information too. Try to find out where you are and help you find some resources in the area. It depends on the area. Sometimes it's a Salvation Army, sometimes it's a Catholic Charities or St. Vincent de Paul, or there are several options. So we can get with you and try to figure out where to get you help for that. Any other questions?
Not so far.
Okay, well, like I said, we just kind of wanted to make this kind of a short introduction to this and remind everybody that there was a moratorium on shutoffs and that there is a change coming. We just don't know what that's going to be yet, and we do want to follow up once we figure that out. Once the Commerce Commission makes a new order. And we will follow up with the people who attended this and notify you of that second webinar that we'll have to explain the new provisions. And we will have more resources. We can talk more about other ways to cut energy costs. But thank you all for coming out to the first one. We hope to see you back for the second one. And Gabriel, thank you for teaming up with me to do this.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.